So, if you're trying to figure out how to build a business or you've been building one for a long time and it's not where you want it to be, and maybe you're in this camp of you've got to hustle, you have to grind, you have to work 24/7 round the clock until you're like dead tired. You might be in that camp, or you might be in the camp of just create it and they will come, just like the baseball movie with Kevin Costner. And you just figure if you visualize it, you will manifest it. And in both situations, maybe you have success, maybe not. But today, my guest, Reuven Shelef, and I are going to debunk maybe both or bring in the balance and give you some pointers, some real strategies to help you create more of the life that you desire. I'm Kim Gross, and I'm the host of Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. Reuven, I'm so glad that you are here today. Thank you so much. And why don't you share with the listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, Kim, I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me. The short version that I like sharing these days about me is I'm focusing on my humanity while working with people on really complex stuff. So it could be complex stuff in corporate environment in high tech. It could be complex stuff that people as human beings are dealing with day to day. My focus is on being human and what that entails in each and every project and interaction. I think I learned this the hard way, and we'll probably talk about it given your outline for today. But just a few data points. I was born in Texas, grew up in Israel. My childhood was around agriculture. I was in a boarding school for high school, and then I served in the military for 4 years. And then I studied engineering and I worked in startups and large corporations in multiple departments, started from engineering and then moved to operations and product management. At a certain point, I started focusing on the cross-functional aspects of programs, identifying where things don't work and putting myself in places to not only fix things that go wrong, but start anticipating what could go wrong and then teaching people how to do things better to eliminate issues. The last 22 years have been dedicated to management consulting and working with people untangling complex challenges.
I know that you have a background where you used to be in this place of hustle, grind, do whatever it takes at all costs. And then something shifted for you in your own life that really got you onto this path of personal development. And then things started to shift for you. Would you like to share that story with us?
The way we become who we become typically is perceived by upbringing, past events, etc. For the superficial aspects of life, that's true.
Mm.
There's a whole domain of psychology that teaches that until this day in various aspects. So I'll touch on that a little bit, and then the shift where I wasn't willing anymore. I had the invitation
Mm.
to not be impacted so much by my past, and that was the turning point. So
Mm.
that's kind of the framework of the story. I grew up in an agricultural environment. So from a very young age, I was conditioned to pay attention to how things are being done. For example, if we don't water the trees on time, they die. If we don't tend to them, feed them, etc. I grew up on citrus orchards. So 3.5 years old, I had to deal with that and learn that, which is, from my perspective, great.
Mm.
Despite the hard work. Growing up in a war zone also has its impact on the importance of diligence. Diligence for paying attention to details and doing things a certain way, or else you have a problem. For example, just at the outbreak of Yom Kippur War, we had to color, and I remember doing this with my elder sister, we had to color the lamps of the car in paint so it's less bright for the enemy airplanes to see, or close the drapes at home really good so the light doesn't show. Imagine such an early conditioning for diligence and how things should be done.
I want to add on to that. Yes, a diligence for how things should be done. But what I think I'm hearing as well is there was a strong need for this for safety. It was safety and survival. Because, like you said, if you didn't water the trees, then the trees died. And I imagine that if the trees died, then you didn't have the crop that would help
Mhm.
to support the family. And then safety just by making sure the curtains were closed. So you had to be almost hyper vigilant, hyper focused on all of these details because it was survival for you.
Yes,
So it was needed at that point in time, as is all of our patterns, right? And it's what
yes.
I talk about all the time on this podcast. Even perfectionism, people pleasing, those are ways of protecting ourselves. They are survival strategies. One might say, okay, well, it's not the same as making sure the trees are watered or that the curtains are closed, because that's literally for life or death. When we were starting to put on perfectionism and people pleasing, I wouldn't say it was life or death, but it felt like it was life or death for our young selves. If I don't please my mom right now and she gets really mad at me and she gets in the car and drives away, I don't know what's going to happen. So,
Hmm.
like in my little child mind, it felt that way. Again, it's all about survival, but we continue these patterns well into adulthood when they no longer serve us. So maybe that's part of what you are going to share as well.
Yeah, well said. And when you said hypervigilant, being vigilant is one thing. Being hypervigilant, meaning
Yes.
being vigilant when it's not needed, that is a burden. I share the wisdom that you just shared.
Yeah. Continue with your story and tell us how that developed you.
Yeah. And then during adolescence in boarding school, there were aspects that nurtured this desire to do things really well and as close to perfection as possible. For example, every couple of weeks, when we don't go home, there's a big show put on by one of the classes. And our instructor told us, you have to rehearse 300 times for it to be perfect.
Mm,
There was a clear measurement until you rehearse 300 times. Don't expect it to be as good as it could get.
mm,
And it proved to be true. It was a great preparation for life, for military, and
mm.
as we already allude to, when overused, it could mess things up. Fast forward through military service, where it's obvious how important it is to do things properly, really talking
Yeah.
about life and death situations. The directive is what doesn't kill you makes you stronger,
Strong.
which is, there is a lot of truth in
Yep.
it, but in the future, like when building a business, you want to be really conscious to not kill yourself. Metaphorically, as someone who identified for many years as a workaholic and loved it, I reaped a lot of benefits out of it. There are places when it's really dangerous
Yeah.
health wise. Or I had to learn the hard way the number of hours that I need to sleep, or how often can I skip. This is in my early 20s, how many nights without sleep I can skip
Mm.
before I crash into the car in front of me, which happened. That was a wake up call. I was working 24/7 for, well, not 24/7, but 24 for about 3, 4 nights. And,
Wow.
at that age, 2 nights without sleep, okay.
Yeah.
Three, problematic. So,
Right.
anyways, as an engineer, I already was equipped with the experience and attention to how things can be done better. And that's where aspects of my perfectionism or attention to detail started showing in a really great way because the products that I developed needed less rework, etc. And I started getting boundaries of time, space, budget. So I started getting feedback from the real world on there's a limit to how much you can invest in things being perfect. And then when I started doing cross functional work, that's where I met people. I started considering people as human beings. In my military service, I had over 100 officers and soldiers reporting to me, but I didn't treat them as human beings. I treated them as soldiers and officers. And that's what construes 30 some years ago and even today a good military man. Today, I don't know how well I would serve in the military given who I am as a human being. But when between 18 and 22, that's how I was. And I did the best I could in that respect. But then working with people in complex environments, I learned that it's all relative. The idea of doing something perfect or right is subjective. I could have my opinions about how things should be done, and they could have another idea. As I grew and got more experienced, I started realizing, well, we could do it this way and we could do it that way. Which one is better? I don't know. It's brand new stuff that we're developing. I started getting a new perspective. And then happened that significant pivot where I was invited to look at myself and my humanity. And the question that made all the difference for me was, how are you being about it? And I didn't understand the question. What do you mean,
Mm.
how am I being? I did this, I did that. "No, you're a human being, right?" She asked. Yeah. Well, how are you being? What's your being around this topic? And
Mm.
that was a brand new concept for me. I got hooked and I studied, learned, practiced ontology, which is the science of being. And it opened up a lot in a way that I could start distinguishing. This is 20 some years ago. I could start distinguishing between what's running me, let's call it automatic or patterns or different aspects of oneself, versus when I'm in charge, when I am running my life.
Mm.
And that would be the saboteurs overusing them and screwing up life.
As we mentioned earlier. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I talk a lot about being a human being over human doing as an antidote to perfectionism. And because when we are wearing the perfection mask, we can go into a place of doing versus being, or black and white, all or nothing. We're either doing it all perfectly or we do nothing at all. Like, honestly, Reuven, I can't even tell you. And I don't know. This is a question that I want to see what your thoughts are, and then I'll get back to my point. Is it almost inescapable for 20-year-olds? I have a 23 and a 26-year-old. I see it in my daughter for sure, but even more when she shares about her friends and other people that are her age, that they are working endless hours, like 60, 70, 80 hours. It's this grind culture. They are just going, 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 and they're exhausted all the time, physically, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. They're just exhausted because they're running on fumes. They don't know how to really slow it down. When they have a day off, they're on their phones, scrolling all the time, or worrying about everything they have to do. So the mind never stops. Is that just par for the course for 20-year-olds? Is this inescapable? Can we change the paradigm? And I know we want to talk about alignment. How do we get our younger people in alignment? What do you think about this? Because it drives me nuts.
Hey, it's Kim here, interrupting your regularly scheduled podcast episode to let you know about an opportunity. like to go deeper into this work, I invite you to head over to Amazon.com and pick up your copy of my book, Free to Be: A Pathway to Inner Liberation. If you are looking to unhook from people pleasing and perfectionistic patterns, if you're looking to have a better way of identifying your patterns and then how you can unhook so you can be free to step outside your comfort zone, free to have more meaningful relationships in your life, free to be your true self without hiding behind a mask any longer. If you desire any of this, then I encourage you to pick up your copy. And if you enjoy my book as much as I loved writing it, please go on over and leave a review on Amazon. You can leave a star review or written review. Now back to your regularly scheduled podcast episode.
Yeah, we can definitely see it as alignment. And I have two wonderful kids in their 20s. It's not inescapable.
Okay.
It requires intervention
Mm.
and giving them the context earlier in life. So if we start at 18, it's too late.
Mm.
Not completely too late, but for the most part.
Yeah.
On my personal journey of growth and development, I met people in their 20s. I was blown away by how different they were living their life compared to how I lived my life in my 20s or everyone I knew until that point. If you're listening and you're 20 some years
Yes.
old, it's you. And I met these 20 some year olds in a moving meditation workshop or in a deep process of discovering who I am and what are the patterns that are running me. Now, I did it when I was about 40, and they were doing it when they were in their early 20s. That gave them an opportunity to live another 20 years with a lot more awareness
Yeah.
and potential fulfillment. Now, not everyone that does a course implements it in life.
Yeah.
I do. I do. If something resonates with me, I dive deep and I take it on. And whoever does even just a bit gets so much, even perspective. So, my kids, for example, didn't do the level of growth and development that I did in my 40s or in their 20s. So, they have some time. I gave them enough to have a perspective and know when it's time to grind and do whatever it takes, and when it's time to take a pause or to nurture themselves or to stop and take a walk or stop and take a swim. I had this fantasy when they were still little. When they become 16, they'll join me in the moving meditation classes that I'm doing every week. And still, I was able to indirectly have them exposed to different modalities so they have a menu to choose from when they feel exhausted or when they're not sure what to do. They have a support network, they have a menu to choose from.
I love that you're saying that. And I'm going to add something into this because I think what's also important is that early on, our kids learn, right? If it's possible, that they learn that they have to know that they are worthy and valuable enough to take that pause. Sometimes I think when they're at that age, when there's this culture of grind and competition, and oh my goodness, if I don't work 75 hours and I don't complete my project on time, my boss is going to be mad or I'm going to get fired. How am I going to pay my rent? There are certain realities that have to be met. But you know what? And maybe this is just me saying pie in the sky, and maybe it's easy from my standpoint to say this. But what I want to say is, and some people might be mad when they hear me say this, but I have to say it. You might have to, even in your 20s, adjust some of your expectations, your desires, your standards. If you have a fancy car, high car payment, or expensive rent, or you're going out all the time, then yeah, you might need to keep working that job and making all that money to support that lifestyle. But what if you were to choose a simpler life, or got a roommate, or lived at home for a while longer and saved up some money so that you could take those pauses? You could go for the meditation, you could go for the swim or whatever. It doesn't have to be that drastic, that all or nothing either. I want to be mindful that there's somewhere in the middle of that. And I think that's really what you and I wanted to focus on today, middle ground, right?
Mhm.
The middle ground is the key for perfectionism. It's the balance, it's the gray, it's not all or nothing, it's alignment. And I really want you to share what that means. And keep in mind, a majority of the people listening in my audience are going to be female. I have many listeners that are moms that have 20-year-olds, but then I have like middle 20-year-olds, 25 to 35-year-olds that listen. So there's really quite a range of females that listen to this podcast. We can speak to the moms that can help their daughters, but we can help the young women too, so that they have a better opportunity for living in alignment and living with peace and living with joy and abundance instead of this craziness that so many of our people live in. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. The essential aspects of alignment are the same, whether it's internal alignment or with others. Sometimes you have to go deeper inward to see that for yourself, but generally, I stand behind this. I also I want to tie this to our previous conversation and distinguish passion, desire, commitment, and responsibility. To explain what I'm talking about, someone has to be passionate about cars to buy an expensive car. Someone has to be responsible to make ends meet and not buy a car they cannot afford. And the commitment part comes into, what am I committed to? Am I committed to doing whatever it takes to sustain the expensive car? Or am I committed to living a peaceful life? Or am I committed to be the best I can in my work? The first invitation before talking about alignment is to give the context of we need to align here. So there are many aspects to it, but just to name a few, align who I am as a human being. What is my purpose in this lifetime? And for many people, that's not distinguished. It wasn't distinguished for me until 2008. And I distinguished it, and my life transformed because I started living my life checking every day. Am I in alignment with what I declared as my life purpose? Okay. So, key aspects: who am I as a human being? What am I here to contribute? What are my commitments? Could be in many areas of life. Where am I practicing responsibility where I'm not? How does being responsible look in my personal life or my professional life? What am I passionate about? What am I good at? And what do I want? My desires, etc. So, just to name a few areas of life to look at and then seek alignment between them. Okay, so that's the context. When I work with my clients, we pretty early on use a map to map these and other areas. We actually map their specific areas that they're dealing with, and then we use these distinctions to look at what are their commitments or desires in each area to make sense out of it and see the vectors and where they actually want to go with their life. Key aspect: want, not condition to. So that's where the rubber hits the road. Okay, you're conditioned that way, but we're talking about your future now, not necessarily on your path. Okay, so with that, in order to say, I feel in alignment, I can look at my promises, my agreements. Like I said, it could be with myself or with others. If, for example, in that work I've done to declare what's important to me, what I'm out to accomplish in my life, and that requires a certain investment of time, money, energy, then I can look at a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly. Did I actually accomplish what I said I'll accomplish in that area? If I did, I am in alignment with my promises. If I didn't, I am in misalignment. That's an opportunity to do whatever it takes to be aligned or to reevaluate the agreement. Maybe I committed myself to something that is beyond my abilities or beyond my true wants. I thought I wanted that, but now I discover that no, it's killing me. I don't want to do it, or I don't want to do it to that extent. So a lot of gray instead of black and white.
Mm.
But the black and white part is, am I in alignment? Do you feel content? Do you feel positive in the world of positive and negative, good or bad? How do you feel? Do you feel happy? If you don't feel happy, that means you're not in alignment. That's one aspect of looking at it. If you feel not in alignment, you feel that something is off. It could be you're ill. The body gives us a lot of signals that we can listen to. Or you had a rough day in interaction with people. You can look at what ran the show. And typically, if we boil it down, it boils down to broken promises and undelivered communication. So I invite anyone who's listening to check and see where is an area that you're struggling with. And then ask yourself, are there any broken promises or broken agreements in that area? Either that you broke or someone else broke.
So I have an example, if we could bring that in, because as you're talking, I'm thinking and I'm trying to make sense for myself. So I'm passionate about doing my podcast, talking about patterns, unhooking from patterns, becoming more of your true self, about people pleasing, all the content that I talk about. I love it. It is my life purpose. It is my mess that I'm turning into my message. I love doing this. What I don't always love doing is social media. When you said, ask the question, do you feel good when you're doing it? Do you feel happy? Does it light you up? It doesn't, because I'm following a script that says this is how you should be doing social media. This is what you need to do in order to grow. You have to follow A, B, C, and D. And because I don't feel that I light up as much when I do it as I do when I'm doing a podcast. When I'm doing a podcast, I'm in flow. It's easeful. I get excited. I get energized. But when I'm doing just a short clip on social, I'm not. So does that mean, my question for you is, am I out of alignment with social media and therefore shouldn't do it? Or is it just one of those things that you kind of have to do in order to get to the end game of what I do love to do?
Both are right. However, the question that I would ask, given the context that I just laid out, what is your commitment? In this area, in this topic, what is your commitment?
My commitment to the whole thing is to serve other
Mhm.
people. I'm committed to serving and helping others through
And
my words.
okay, great. And let's assume that in order to reach others. You need to do ABC in areas you don't like doing. When you were a young mom
Mm,
and your first child woke up every half hour at night and demanded to be
mm.
nurtured, it's the last thing you wanted to do. And what kept you doing it is your commitment to motherhood. It's the commitment that kept you doing all kinds of things that you never imagined that you'll do. And it's pretty similar in this case. Now, the difference is, as a young mom with a newborn, it's generally life and death. The danger of not doing is real versus going out there, it's a lot more grayish. It depends, and you don't know. You might do all the videos and all the social media, and nothing will come out of it. So it's not binary and it's not a clear return. However, the distinction of commitment can be used in the same way, where once you know that you're doing this because you said you'll do that, no matter what, then you have to do it.
Yeah.
There is one thing that helps is to remove the ongoing chatter that we have in our mind. Oh, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Or all the negative patterns that show up telling you, I'm not good enough and I don't like this. So that's where you have to identify one technique to help with this is doing small steps. You take something intimidating, break it down on paper to discrete steps where the first step is one that you have absolutely no problem doing. For example, it could be as dumb as turn on the computer or hook up the microphone. I'm talking this level to the level that you truly have no problem, zero intimidation. And then what happens in reality, we discover that we can get a very long way using these tiny steps because the saboteur chatter is not interfering all that way until that moment that we're actually intimidated. Just before our call today, I didn't want to do it. I have to show up in my best self. I have to have the lighting right. I have to do the sound check. I have to prepare the whole home, how it is, right? You
Yeah,
do it all
same.
the
My
time.
microphone.
The truth is, Kim, when I saw your email confirming the link and all that,
You're like, oh shit, she.
I was hoping you're canceling. Now,
Reuven, thank you for being so honest about that. I love that.
now, is this truly who I am?
Yeah.
My commitment is sharing my wisdom and experience with the world.
Yeah.
This is why I said yes to showing up on your podcast. It's
Yeah.
fully aligned with my commitment. I am not committed to having a life where I give up when it's hard. It was an easy alignment check that I had today,
Yeah.
and I quickly realigned. I'm well trained in it. It took a lot of time. There are places in life where we have to screw up over and over again until we realize how to deal with tough situations and how to see that we're misaligned.
Yeah.
But once you're clear about your commitment, make it easy for you, break it down to steps, then you find that it's possible and it's so fulfilling to break through what intimidated just before.
I want to underline and highlight what you just said because it's such an important piece for the perfectionist. Perfectionists have this fixed mindset. I'm going to make a decision or a commitment that I'm going to do something. And then there's this expectation that I'm going to do it perfectly. I'm going to get to the pinnacle straight away with no growth at all. And when I fail, then forget it. Don't do it at all. I'll find all the reasons. I'll find my saboteur will come in loud and strong. I don't really need to do Instagram. I don't really need to be on TikTok. I'll find all the reasons not to. I'm just going to do the podcast, which is easy because I love the podcast. That stuff's hard. What you're saying is the antidote. Break it down into these little steps. That's the juice right there. That's the antidote. Taking something big and overwhelming and break it down into the simplest, smallest steps. I think that's really important. And I appreciate you bringing that in. Is there
Yeah.
anything else as we start to near the end? Anything else that you want to bring in terms of alignment and being able to check in with ourselves when we're misaligned? We're saying this is whether you have a business, whether it's in your personal life, it doesn't matter. In your relationship, this is just a way of thinking and being in life, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I want to complete our conversation about the challenge that you brought up
Yes.
and share another powerful way to help in those situations where we are committed to doing something, to accomplishing something, and we are aware that we are in the way. One way is to go in, do analysis, go to a therapist, do some more analysis, figure out what's running the show, heal the wounds of the past. And my tone here might imply disrespect. I am saying this with full respect. The tone is more, it's a lengthy process and it requires a lot of work on its own, which not everyone wants to do. Another option is to seek help from others who are so passionate about doing social media. And then it's just bridging that gap between what I want to be out there and their abilities to make it happen. They can also serve as accountability partners. I just wanted to add that as other ways to handle these kinds of situations.
Absolutely.
The other part that I want to add to complete, we talked about when I started sharing about alignment and detecting misalignment, we focused a lot on the commitment part. And I want to reiterate the other part, which is much harder for people typically, and that's undelivered communication. Whenever you feel stressed, please ask yourself, is there any communication that I have and I did not deliver? Meaning, I have something to say. It could be to myself, but that's harder to identify, more advanced. Let's start with other people, talking about alignment with others. Is there anything that I have to say to someone else and I didn't say it? Is there, first of all, identifying that there is something that I have to say to another to remedy a relationship, enhance a relationship, or apologize for something that went wrong? Even if something went wrong and I have no idea what went wrong, but there's no proper communication, that is alignment killer number one. You cannot be in alignment with yourself or with others when there is undelivered communication.
I have a question about the communication. Are you saying that if I want to manifest or create the life that I desire, my relationships with my kids, my husband, friends, if I want to create the life that I want with my podcast, my business, my having a community, my health, all of it. That if that's what I want to create, that's what I desire, I want to manifest that. And part of being able to manifest the life that we desire is to be in alignment. Part of being in alignment is, yes, about knowing what you're committed to and staying to it, but you're talking about communication. If we are not being, and I guess I'm thinking about the four agreements, almost like impeccable with our words. I know that's not exactly what you're saying, but that's like what's coming to my mind. It's okay. Is there some way, like if I'm withholding a truth somewhere with someone, as long as I'm withholding a truth, then there's a misalignment. And if there's, it's just like a car, right? With brakes. If your
Mhm.
brakes are out of alignment a little bit, your car's not going to operate and run as smoothly as it could. So if I'm withholding a truth with a friend or with a sibling, that my life cannot operate on all four cylinders as well as it could be. Is that what you're saying?
That is a wonderful explanation. It encompasses, from my perspective, not only communication, but also the promises. If I said that I'll do something and I didn't communicate about it, it causes misalignment, like you described. If I broke my promise and I communicated about it, that can restore alignment. Or some would say integrity, not as a moral thing, but just as something that works, like car brakes or a wheel of a bicycle. If one of the spokes is out, it can turn, but it's not turning as it should. Okay, so what you described is another level of honoring your word, which is a combination of keeping your word with delivering communication. So a lot of suffer is an indication for misalignment. Where does suffer come from? Same place. Either there's a broken promise, I'm not true to my commitment, or I have something to say and I didn't say it, or I'm expecting someone else to say something and they didn't say it, but I'm not telling them. So it goes back to me.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to definitely take pieces of this podcast and put it in my everyday life. Is there anything else that you want to add? Can you share with the listeners where they can find you if they listen to this episode and say, oh my God, there's so much wisdom in this episode? How do I find Reuven?
I'm always excited when people outside my regular circle reach out to me and are interested to talk, because I get a glimpse into someone's world and what they're facing. Whether we end up working together or not, I always love hearing from people. You can go to meetreuven.com and book a free 30-minute call with me. That's an effective way of reaching out.
Absolutely. I really appreciate your honesty about how you felt prior to getting on the call. I was feeling in a similar way. I just had a busy morning doing a whole bunch of things and then I was having to get ready. But every time I get on and I record and I connect with another person, feel more energized from the conversation than I did prior. And I'm always so grateful. I am so grateful that we had this call. I feel so energized. I'm going to actually get off this call and I'm going to go record some more social media because I'm committed to it. So I'm going to go record for my Instagram. And I thank you so much for being a guest on Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists.
Thank you very much for having me, Kim. Being authentic helps living a fulfilling and aligned life.
Hey, Kim Gross here. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. I invite you to hop on over to my website, kimgrosscoaching.com. Right there on the front page, there's a quiz for people pleasers and perfectionists. You can find out if you have tendencies. You can also get into my newsletter where you will be given valuable content every week on different topics I share here in the podcast. And if you really did enjoy this episode, if you found it helpful, if you found it valuable, please go to, if you're on YouTube, go and subscribe. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, then I invite you to leave a review. You can even do a star review. It doesn't have to be a written review. If you know of someone who can benefit from this podcast or this particular episode, please share it with them. I'll see you next time.